This happened to me during COVID. And to be honest with you, if someone would have came to me before that and told me the same story, I'm not sure I would have believed them. My wife, my daughter, and her boyfriend and me went out shooting pool one night. And when we got done shooting pool, we decided to go to IHOP for breakfast. And when we walked in, there weren't many people there. A couple of customers, two waitresses, a couple of cooks. And we stood there for what seemed to be about 4 or 5 minutes before someone came to seat us. And the waitress took us to our seat and told us that someone would be with us shortly. A few minutes later, 2 other couples came into the restaurant and were seated almost immediately. And they also happened to be black. And what caught my attention wasn't that they'd been seated. It was that the waitress that took them was the same one that took us, and she took their drink orders immediately and went and got their drinks. And that's when I started wondering what was going on. So I looked around the restaurant. My wife, my daughter, and I were the only white people, and my soon-to-be son-in-law was the only Hispanic person in the restaurant. Every waitress working that night and the 2 cooks were all black. And they all had masks on, for COVID, and it had BLM on the masks. I didn't know what to think just yet. So I asked my little family, I said, have any of y'all noticed that we're being ignored, or am I the only one? And at that point, almost simultaneously, they all said, yeah, we're being ignored. And by that point, we had been sitting there for about 10 minutes. So I got up and walked over to where the cooks were so I could ask for a manager. And one of the waitresses overheard me, and she walked over to me and she said, is there a problem? And I said, yes, ma'am, there is. We've been sitting here for about 10 minutes and nobody's taken our drink order or our food order. And the 2 couples that came in after us have already been waited on. She apologized, but it didn't really feel like an apology. It felt more like I was bothering her. And she told me if I just go back and sit down, that someone would be with us in a minute. So I agreed, and I went back to the table. 5 more minutes or so had passed, and then I watched those same 2 couples get their food from the same waitress. Once again, she walked right past our table and ignored us as if we weren't even sitting there. By then, all 4 of us were frustrated. When the waitress walked by us again, I stopped her. I said, ma'am, are we ever going to get served? We've been sitting here for about 15 minutes, and no one has even gave us our drink or got our drink orders. And she looked at me and she said, we'll get to you as soon as we can, sir. And I said, you're going to get to us the same way you got to the 2 other couples that came in after us? And yeah, I was being a smartass at that point. And she looked down her nose at me like this. You've seen the look. And she said, what do you mean by that? I could tell by the way she asked that she wasn't really looking for an answer. And that's when I decided it was time to get out of there. And I looked at my little family. I said, y'all come on, let's go. We got up and started walking toward the door. As we almost got out the restaurant, that same waitress called across the dining room and said, I can get to you now, sir. I didn't even look back. Just kept on walking. I was 44 years old at the time, and I'd never experienced anything like that before. We ended up going home and cooking our own food. And the whole ride home, we talked about what had just happened. My daughter was 23 years old at the time. And out of nowhere, she looked at me and she said, Dad, I think those people were being racist toward us. I don't know what was in those people's hearts. I can't honestly say what they were thinking. All I know is we were the only white people there and one Hispanic. I know who got served and who didn't. I also know how it made us feel. I was raised around all kind of folks, white, black, Hispanic, whatever. And we were all friends. We had pool parties. We had cookouts together. One of my best friends growing up was black. And no time had I ever experienced racism, at least not that I noticed. But it sure did feel like it at the IHOP. We've never been back. What do y'all believe happened to us that night? Leave your answer in the comments. Thank y'all for watching and subscribing, and I'll see you all in the next video.